The phone conversation between fantasy veterans Bob Harris and Matt Waldman is a quick and dirty rundown of players, units, or teams from Sunday's games. Feel it or fuck it is our instant verdict on the fantasy value of a player or situation, not the ability, effort, or character of the player. This is just how two old-timers in this industry talk when they got a lot to cover in a little time. Good morning, Bob Harris.
What's good about it? Oh, right. There were a lot of points scored. That was great. What a Sunday of action, Matt Waldman. That was insane. Football. I put out a nice tweet, a little hashtag analysis. Football is crazy, yo.
Yeah.
It is, man. It's just it is.
You know it's crazy when Andrew Beck, a tight end out of Texas, who played at Denver and New England, New England then Denver, and now is a fullback, muffs a kickoff and then returns the thing across the width and length of the field in a crazy victory over the heavily favored Jaguars. Am I right?
You are right. I want to ask you a quick question because I've been talking about this a lot, in the last few days, and I'm getting in arguments with people, and you'll be surprised to learn people have strong points of view in this industry. Well, but like, we're sitting here and we're starting players that, that haven't played well the first 2 weeks over players who have played demonstrably well the first 2 weeks. Where are you at on the playing your studs? I mean, is this something you must do? Or are you like, okay, saying, look, Jamar Chase's circumstances aren't great this week and Puka Nakua's are. Maybe I could think about playing Puka Nakua over Jamar Chase in a game. Are you there?
Yeah, I've never believed in starting your studs. I just believe in looking at what's going on and doing the best you can with the situation.
Your studs identify themselves for you, and the guys you invested in to be your studs don't. The whole reason we're playing those guys, I think, is because we fear missing out on the big game that we know is coming, and it is coming, and you might miss it. But that doesn't mean you're going to get a horrible game from the guy you're plugging in to cover until you do get it. I mean, if anyone started Josh Jacobs last night thinking this was the week, sorry. You probably should have played Kyron Williams.
If the data, meaning the film or whatever method of information you're taking leads you down a path that you feel is worthwhile early on in the season, give it a shot. By week 6, week 7, you're probably going to know who's good. And unless they're a rookie quarterback, then you might start to see kind of the defenses adjusting. Ask Baker Mayfield, Drew Lock, all those guys.
I feel like this is an attack on C.J. Stroud, and I'm not here for that.
Well, I like C.J. Stroud, but we'll see how that goes.
We'll see how it goes. All right, that was it. That was all.
Yeah. Well, what about Devin Achane? You feeling him?
I think I can play him. I think
11.2 yards per carry.
I'm feeling him. And look, I saw some of this game, and I can verify. My own eyes saw he ran up the middle on some of those carries. I was told he could not do that. That's a lie. No. Look, this offense is, hitting on all cylinders. And, not to belittle Denver, they haven't played great defense for a couple of weeks, but this is more than somebody not playing great defense. This is a good scheme that's making great use of all its playmakers. And Devin Achane is now one of those playmakers. He is clearly on the list. I think he's a playable commodity now from henceforth.
In terms of long speed, he's the fastest player on the Dolphins team. And that's
trying
saying
to start a fight with Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, that's saying something. I mean, right there. So, you got to look at it this way. Achane is, when you talk about running up the middle, he did do a good job with some plays up the middle. He certainly knows how to get his pads low and to be able to churn out some additional yardage. Also, there was a good sign that when he came in at 188, that he had already gained some more weight, and he was in the mid 190s by the time training camp started. If he can hold on to that, that'll be a good thing too. But really, you look at that Dolphin scheme, when you see something gaudy like, let's say 8 yards per carry, even though he's at 11, or let's say 6 yards per carry, it's probably a good idea with as many touches that Devin Achane even had, that it's a scheme-oriented thing. When you look at that scheme, what's so awesome about it is that they are creating scenarios with a lot of play fakes and motion to generate essentially punt returns and kick returns for running backs. In the same way that Cordero Patterson had that outlier season for the Falcons, and they're running a lot of toss plays to him and creating that type of look. They're doing that with even more slow developing things where you're getting backside linemen who are getting downhill and working across the field 10 yards in front of the line of scrimmage before Achane even turns the corner 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage. So that's
it's
a big
helpful.
deal.
It's helpful to have the guy who would claim he's the fastest guy on the roster,
Yep.
keeping opposing defenses honest and and having effective playmakers at every level, right? I mean, and by the way, they were without Jalen Waddle in this game,
who might have a good argument on any given day that he's the fastest guy on the roster. And when your slowest when your backup receiver is Chosen Anderson, who was also pretty fast, still pretty fast in his own right. I mean, he could be the fastest receiver on a lot of teams still. So, yeah, Devin Achane, he's here to stay for at least the next month. Let's put it that way.
And let's say, how about Raheem Mostert? I am totally feeling Mostert. I have been all along until Jeff Wilson comes back and maybe, and like all due respect to Raheem Mostert, they're very similar players, and I'm guessing they'll split it up. Achane's role seems likely to remain, and maybe Mostert gets chopped up to some degree, or his health dictates that it's diminished. But right now, Raheem Mostert is a must start.
He's also one of the fastest guys on the team. So that's a little different from old Jeffrey Wilson. But still, I feel you. They're both guys who can bang it and be a little bit more powerful. What you're looking at here is until defenses look at what the Miami Dolphins are doing, opposing defensive corners, and figure out ways to stop some of the scheme implementations or some of the fun plays that they're executing right now, like dealing with that motion, dealing with all the different play fakes. Really, my hint to you is follow the pulling guard. Generally that's a good start, but the problem is that it's not just the pulling guard with the Miami Dolphins. They're pulling a lot of different people and using motion and ways to distract teams from just focusing on one thing. So it might be a while. Hint, next year after a Super Bowl run, if things keep up like this.
Doing a great job of protecting Tua also, who, by the way, is falling better.
Yes. Good for him. Good for him. I'll say this. If you listen to me on Tua, you were fucked, because I basically said I'm projecting him to miss at least, I think, 4 games this year. And I don't like to predict injury, but I looked at the past couple years and just felt like you got to look at it from that perspective.
I've been making the argument, and it struck me when I saw Anthony Richardson fall and bounce his head off the ground. It strikes me that if you're making that kind of investment in a quarterback that you are, and it's what, $250 million is a starting point these days for a franchise quarterback. I don't know, pay an hourly guy to come teach him how to fall. I mean, there's people. I mean, I think the way Tua went about it, jiu-jitsu is a great way. I mean, you're falling, rolling, just how to take a blow and accept it. Like boxers get hit how many times in the head over the course of time, and they're not removed for concussions, right? They may get them, but they know how to roll with blows, and I think teaching someone who's taking those kind of shots how to mitigate those shots is probably a good idea.
Hollywood stuntmen could probably get into a sideline too. Considering they get thrown downstairs, which is about the equivalent of what happens in games sometimes. So yeah, I love that point. So what about Jerome Ford? We're on the other end of the spectrum here a little bit with those other two backs, but he did score twice.
As long as he scores the touchdowns, nobody's going to pay attention to that 2 yards of carry that he's put up. Take away the long run, and I get it. You can't take away the long run in the last game. You can't take it away. But if you did, he was getting about 2 yards of carry, which is, I think he got slightly less than that in this, but he's getting the touchdowns. My feeling on him is the Browns already told us their choice. I know Kareem Hunt's there, but it's not because they wanted him there. They already decided they wanted Jerome Ford. That could change over time. I think right now they're kind of committed to Jerome Ford and letting him be the lead back. And if Kareem Hunt gets some work behind him, we'll see where that goes. But for now, it seems like the Browns are, have signaled this since they let Kareem Hunt go. They think Jerome Ford's the guy. Talking to people on the ground, talk to Fred Greetham of the Orange and Brown Report. He's basically said the same thing. That they've revealed their hand with the, so we'll see how it goes. I'm not super enthusiastic about what I've seen outside the touchdowns, but I'm hoping for better.
I liked what I saw on the film. I'll put it that way. Maybe it wasn't efficient for everybody, but there were some tough runs there. And honestly, I just think that you're looking at some situations where with Ford, maybe it's a little bit easier for defenses to see or play what they, guess what the Browns are going to do a little bit. But that may be changing because Deshaun Watson, they spread the field a fair bit this week. And Deshaun Watson did tell the sideline reporters that he's been lobbying to Kevin Stefanski for a year now that he would like to see them use more spread alignments rather than all these compressed alignments that have been like the specialty of Stefanski's scheme. With Nick Chubb out, it seems like they're going towards that. And Deshaun Watson looked better this week.
He looked better. But he had to look better because he couldn't have looked much worse than he did the first two games. So I'm not willing to go all in on him. I felt like the first two games were so bad that he looked so out of sorts. That could it all just be the scheme? Could this just be the fact that he did what he should have done against a matchup that he should have taken advantage of, right? The Titans haven't been slowing down many passers. So I'm hoping that it's a sign that he's taking a step forward. I remain a little bit skeptical. I
get that. I think I'll say I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
Same thing coming from the different side of the coin there.
If you're invested, you have to be encouraged.
Yeah, I mean, you're just feeling curmudgeon-y right now. I know it, Bob Ayers. But Jared Goff, does he bring out the curmudgeon in you? I mean, he looked pretty good. He had one interception that should have been taken out. But are you there? Are you in on him as a quarterback one in fantasy leagues?
I think we probably should be, right? I think it's funny how the perception has followed him that Sean McVay's probably his own failures led him to get rid of a quarterback who is doing a pretty good job for him. And now that quarterback is doing a pretty good job at the next stop, and basically because he's a pretty good quarterback, especially at home. I mean, there's no denying the numbers at home, but I think overall, I think any given week, if I had to play Jared Goff, I could think of worse. He's got great weapons, an aggressive offensive play caller, and when all the pieces are there, I'm excited to see what it's going to look like. But for right now, I'm fine playing him.
Yeah, and he figures out the blitz pretty well. That was one of the big things that people were, I think Sean McVay was probably leaking a little bit and saying some things about him that were true at the time and no longer true now. But I'll say this, I studied Jared Goff at Cal, and I thought one of the most redeeming qualities about his game was how he handled pressure. The way he would stand in, the way that he would bait pressure and make sudden moves. And then it looked like he forgot how to do that with the Rams. There's that Miami game from a few years ago where they just kept bringing heavy pressure, and he looked like a deer in headlights. But I think that there was something more to that story a little bit. And so, Jared Goff, looking at how he's handled the blitz and how he's handled things overall, I think you could do a lot worse than Goff as your starter. And so I'm feeling him. Daniel Jones, is he one of those guys that you could be doing a lot worse, or does it just depend on the week?
I feel like this is a personal attack.
Is his middle name Harris, Bob? That's what I need to know. Is his name
Daniel
Harris?
He is not. He is not.
That's a very Duke kind of name right there.
He's not part of my tribe, but that's okay. I will honorarily anoint him as a. Look, there's reason to be concerned at the moment, right? Number one, Daniel, when you're throwing to Darren Waller, try to throw accurate passes, or at least passes that are more catchable than the ones you're throwing at the current point in time. He's going to be double covered, and he needs your help, young man. That said, there's always going to be the rushing equity. He is not a desired play right now. Especially with Saquon Barkley out, it's going to be tough sledding for the next few weeks. And I thought something Jordan Ronan wrote from ESPN was on point. He said, you're going to hear talk that Barkley wants to come back this week. Barkley's not going to come back this week, nor should he come back this week. He shouldn't come back. Probably he'll end up being out like a month, and that's probably seems about right. And it's going to be a struggle for this offense. I'm not excited. So if you had needs to move on or found a player you needed to get plug in ahead of him, I'd be fine with it. I think over the course of the season, he'll be more than serviceable, but right now he's probably not.
Yeah, if he makes it through the next month, because in terms of intact, because he did get pressured a good deal, a good bit, and there were two throws that he had to Waller in particular that were wide open in single coverage that he missed blatantly, mainly because he had to rush the throw.
Yep.
One he rushed, and he had time to reset, and he should have. The second one, he had time, and he just panicked because he had been pressured so much that it got to him, like any quarterback. I
Yeah.
mean, there are very few quarterbacks that you put that much pressure on. They're eventually they're going to start seeing ghosts and they're going to start throwing inaccurate balls, and that's what happened with Daniel Jones. Now, at the same time, you've got Jimmy Garoppolo, who I think that he just sees dead people. So
I don't care who he sees other than Devontae Adams.
Yeah, well, that's
a little bit of Jacoby Myers.
That's fine with that, but I'd like him to see more people and other that are alive. Because he's seeing dead people. The Haley Joel Osment of quarterbacks is, I don't
horrible.
know. Yeah,
horrible.
But he looks good for TV. I'm sure he's
Yes,
going
he
to be. He's going to be a commentator one day. That or a porn star. I don't know which. I thought he was already into that kind of stuff. From what I heard.
Rumor has
I don't know. Rumor has it. Who knows? Where are we at? Joshua Dobbs. We go from the porn star to the aerospace engineer, the rocket scientist. He looked pretty good.
He looked. It was a good game, right? It feels like a trap. Right? It feels like a trap.
Start your studs. No.
couple thoughts here. I was really, watching that little video that came out of Gannon giving his fiery speech and nobody feeling very fiery about it. I thought was like, man, that's not a good sign. I'm going to go ahead and say this team is playing hard. Their defense has been playing hard every game. The offense is starting to come together and showing signs. They ran the ball really well and took a lot of pressure. And they did some unique things, like with Rondale Moore running as a running back, just lining up straight up as a running back, which I've kind of not been a Rondale Moore guy. Felt like Andy Isabella too, and like another whiff, but maybe they'll cobble together some ways to use it. But in general, Joshua Dobbs is keeping the offense, in this game, kept the offensive schedule. That has not been the case entire season. And there have been times where he's been there like maybe half the game. Oh, those were the first 2 weeks. So I don't know. Again, I feel like this might be a little bit of a trap that we're going to run towards it. And just like maybe Zach Ertz was a little bit of a trap, the two big PPR games and then nothing this week. But look, this week
Cowboys are a tough defense.
Right. I mean, I don't want to be I'm trying to walk the fine line of being dismissive and not being dismissive because it's a very tough game. And the Cowboys had some issues of their own with their offensive line. And I'm not going to sit here and say that Trayvon Diggs being gone is why, made a big difference, because I think they have depth in their secondary. It's obviously not that guy, but still, this just seems like an outlier game to me. So I'm not going to put too much into it, but it is encouraging if you're a Cardinals fan for sure.
Okay, I'll just make it quick. I'm feeling Joshua Dobbs as an NFL replacement quarterback. Fuck him as a fantasy guy. He will support a fantasy guy or two with some plays, and he will get you some yardage. He will certainly get you some yardage with his legs, especially against overzealous safeties like Donovan Wilson, who fucked up a couple of times on some plays where he poked his head about 5 steps too far to the inside, at least on a couple of big runs. Rondale Moore, I'm going to get back to. Let's go back to him because I'll say fuck it with Rondale Moore too. Totally. I thought about dropping him for about 3 weeks from a dynasty squad, the only squad where I've even had him, because the whole idea, even back in his rookie days, where people were saying he's a contested catch threat, he's the next Steve Smith type of player, and I'm like, fuck that, I haven't seen that. And then I saw someone use video evidence of a practice play of a back shoulder fade where he didn't even have much contact at all. It wasn't even what you would call a jump back type of play to go get. It was just running under a ball with tight coverage, and they were using that as evidence for that. That's like that, if you're going to compare him to Steve Smith, it would be kind of like saying that someone who fought off a toddler with a rubber, like with a foam baseball bat, is on the level of Steve Smith, who beat the crap out of Terrell Suggs in the locker room or something. I mean, let's not go there.
So if I was sitting here today and I had a dynasty roster, I had to decide between Rondale Moore and Michael Wilson, it wouldn't even be a hard decision for me.
Not at all, because Moore isn't even a running back. I mean, that was a huge open run for him, and that was great, and I love the idea of using him situationally like that. but he's Tavon Austin part 2 at this stage until they figure out how to use him downhill. The biggest problem is that they try to use him like he's going to be the answer to what Miami's doing with their plays that move east-west. Stop using Rondale Moore east-west. You don't have enough speed elsewhere to force defenses to respect other people. And so they're just going to pay attention to Moore over and over again. Let him get downhill and work downhill. He's better that way. So what about James Conner? Are you feeling him, even though...
I've been feeling him all year long. I was drafting him heavily.
You're a Conner guy.
As long as he's in the lockdown right position, he's going to be very good. He does what he does. He's super effective. He's at running the football, it turns out, and just has a good sense for the creases and seems to know what he's doing, and super confident and a very tough man. I love him.
I love him. I love him even more that now he's no longer a Steeler, and I love it that Steelers folks like my buddies Cecil Lammy and Sigmund Bloom were like,
Whoa.
James Conner, forget him. We're glad he's gone. He's not that good. Yeah.
Suck it, Yinzers.
That's right. That's right. So I want James Conner to play till he's 120. Just to rub it into my Steelers brethren. But no, he looks good. Keaontay Ingram, like I'll say, good cutback runner when he gets opportunities to actually have something that's blocked. But he hasn't seen much that's blocked. So fuck him right now, but I'm feeling him as a handcuff. Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. All right. Rico Dowdle, though. Are you feeling Rico Dowdle in the same capacity, maybe even a little more appealing, or nah?
Handcuff is it, right? I mean, he had a nice run or two, maybe. One was definitely a really nice run. They are all in on Tony Pollard, and last year's narrative that he must have a limited role in order to be most successful has gone out the window. They no longer believe that. We'll find out whether it's true or not over the course of the season. Yeah. Maybe they're wrong about it, but right now they're piling him the work high on his plate, and he's delivering to a relatively good degree. He's pounding up the middle. He looks like a damn feature back. If I'm not mistaken, it looks good.
No way. Totally agree with that, but I'm adding Rico Dowdle in a lot of leagues right now where running back opportunities are sparse because it could just be any one play, especially with 3 linemen out last week. So let's take a look at, how about Derrick Henry? Was this just an anomaly game, or are you worried about him?
If I said I wasn't slightly worried, I'd be lying. But I'm not like overly worried. It's like I'm to the point where I'm like considering taking him out of lineups, like I maybe am with like Josh Jacobs. But maybe I should. Maybe one more game, and I will be considering him. And maybe it will depend on the options. Maybe in the leagues where I have him, I don't have the kind of options that have risen up in some cases. The Brian Robinson Juniors. I mean, if you're sitting here every week deciding, Brian Robinson Jr. looks like a real running back. Everybody. Gets a good workload, does something with it, has good vision, runs with power, runs through tough matchups, etc. Kyron Williams, the guy that's getting this intense workload. If you don't have guys that have risen up your ranks, you're still sticking with the Derrick Henrys and Josh Jacobs of the world for right now. But I need to see a little more pretty soon, or I'm going to become impatient. Like, the heavy snap shares for Tyjae Spears have been, maybe more worrisome than one bad game.
I would say that's more worrisome if you were counting on Derrick Henry to be an elite running back one.
Right.
But I think
you didn't have to draft him like that, right?
No,
you were drafting him.
Yeah. And I believe you can draft him I believe he's going to play at his value of where you drafted him, even with Tyjae Spears. And the big reason is that the Browns defense is probably one of the 2 best defenses in the league when it comes to stopping the run. They put Grant Delpit up in there doing the Troy Polamalu type of thing. Can't believe I just referenced the Steeler in an admirable way. But, hey, there we are. He did a great job with that. They filled a lot of gaps. They diverted Derrick Henry from getting downhill or even going in the initial direction he wanted to go. And when you can do that and have multiple bodies on him, he ain't doing shit. Right. And that's basically what happened.
Jim Schwartz is a pretty sharp cookie, it turns out.
Oh, yeah. He just as the Browns player said, we feel like we're getting to play without our seatbelts on.
Right.
And that's a dangerous thing for defenders because they don't like seatbelts anyway. So this is a really good development, and I would just say that when you look at the rest of the schedule, Titans are going to be okay. I think in terms of they're not going to be great against they're not going to be good against good teams, like really good defenses, but they're going to be fine against average to slightly below average defenses, and they got enough of them on the schedule.
And they need to run the football because they can't throw, for starters. Also, they can't stop other offenses from throwing the football. They can stop other offenses from running. So if they just need to be on the field, and that's going to be Derrick Henry's going to be the key to that.
So you're saying fuck DeAndre Hopkins, or is he an exception to the rule?
He's not an exception to the rule, but he has enough of a role that you can play him. I hope he gets healthy at some point. But if you need this passing attack to carry you to victories in fantasy football, you've probably made wrong choices.
Yeah, you probably did. And when you look at Hopkins thus far, I mean, we're looking at at his game logs. It hasn't been all that impressive.
Target shares
the plays, the plays have been impressive that he's made, but that's the problem is that it's just not enough conversions of some of those plays. So, yep, I would say for now he's on your bench. Fuck it until further notice.
He's kind of like he's in Drake London territory with me. He's a decision at a wide receiver 3. I'm hoping I have better choices.
That makes sense. Russell Wilson, feeling any better about him, even with that 70-point shellacking?
I think the 70-point shellacking makes me feel better about him. The last 2 weeks make me feel better about him. If the Denver's not going to play any defense, he's going to throw the ball a hell of a lot. And I'm all about that. And he runs a fair amount. I mean, he's not a quarterback one, but if you're in a pinch, bye weeks are coming, people, he might be able to help you out.
Yeah, I thought he looked pretty good, actually. And if Courtland Sutton didn't drop a couple of opportunities, they might have been a little closer at halftime, and maybe this would have been a bit of a different game. Probably not with that defense, but the offense might not have been as deflated, and that might have kept it interesting for a little while. So, what say you about this receiving core? Courtland Sutton, Marvin Mims. You feeling anything about either of these guys?
I think Marvin Mims is a player I would like to have on rosters because at some point Sean Payton's going to figure out the benefits of unleashing him, and he looks like the playmaking option on this receiving core with all. I've never been a big Jerry Jeudy person. I've been bigger on Courtland Sutton, and I think Courtland Sutton at least delivers to a degree. I mean, imperfect though he is, he's that big body, and it seems to have Russell Wilson's attention in the red zone, and that's worth something. I don't know about Courtland Sutton, but Marvin Mims looks like a tremendous playmaker who's gonna be very impressive over the course of his career.
Yeah, I think Marvin Mims will eventually be the primary or co-primary in this offense. Courtland Sutton, though, I often bang on him for his inability to use his hands in the optimal way and dropping passes or making things harder on himself than he should. Even the fumble he had was a result of bad technique catching the ball and being out of control. He had a one-on-one against a linebacker on a slant that he should have caught the first time, and if he did, he wouldn't have had to fight the ball and fall over while he fought the ball, and that could have been a much bigger play. All that said, Courtland Sutton's a good enough receiver to be on your fantasy rosters. He's a good fantasy receiver and a good NFL receiver. He's just in a role where they're expecting him to be a great NFL receiver and a great fantasy player. And he is not, and he probably never be. If
I think you just called Jerry Jeudy a failure without calling him a failure.
Wow, are you calling me out on Jerry Jeudy? I didn't even say his name. Wow,
that's why. It's like calling him a failure by omission.
Yeah, I'm still okay with Jeudy, but I always thought when people said he's the next Antonio Brown, I thought he was an aspiring Reggie Wayne, and he's still aspiring right now. We'll put it that way.
There's a good point. Yeah. I'll take that one.
Okay. So, Calvin Austin, big play Austin.
Look, man, that's what he is. So until I see this offense producing enough big plays to fuel that fire, and I don't know that I'm going to take a single game against the Raiders as evidence that this offense has turned a corner or anything. I'll go ahead.
Are the Raiders the Jerry Jeudy of defenses? Is that what you're saying? Okay.
They might be. Max Crosby, I love you. You're a great man. And look, they have some good individual players, but as a unit, they're not like especially imposing. So I'll just say, Calvin Austin is an exciting player, and I thought definitely caught my attention when he was making, in last night's game. But I just don't know if there's enough meat on the bone for everybody there, fantasy wise, to satisfy those needs. So he's a little bit of an outlier still for me.
Yeah, he is. He's a big roster kind of take a chance guy and see if he can get more targets. That's about all.
Well, I think half the appeal of him is the Steelers' this great history of identifying receiving talent, right? I mean, they have a knack for that.
Yeah, and you know what? And I would agree with them, and I think I have a knack for it sometimes. So I would say I'm a Calvin Austin fan long term. Short term, yeah, you're not. You're looking to see. Now, the thing that's fascinating to me is that there's a guy in the Texans who got drafted who has a lot of Calvin Austin skills, and he's getting opportunities, and defenses are disrespecting him. I would say fuck the Jaguars for playing two safeties in the box with two cornerbacks playing wide, playing outside shade, and you run. That's basically someone screaming, "Throw the post." And they did.
I don't want to go down the. I don't want to go down the Jaguars wormhole because they're doing many things that I don't approve of.
Yeah, well, I'm feeling Tank Dell, even though he basically just put on tape that said, "Don't ever disrespect me again," and they did it twice in that game.
We should pay attention to players when quarterbacks say they have an affinity for that player too. Yeah. Just like, get him on the radar at least and start looking at him. And I had a blind spot to Tank Dell, and the only reason I noticed him was because of the C.J. Stroud, having a connection to him. Otherwise, I would still probably not be paying attention to him and dismissing his great play as just a fluke. But I think there's something to this. And I'll rewatch the games, but the parts I saw, he looks like he's part of this offense. And Nico Collins had a lousy game though too. So.
Yeah, but it's interesting because Robert Woods has been a nice little kind of utility, reliable route option that you would expect on third downs or as the third or second guy in the progression who's going to run the right route, be in the right spot on the outside. That's been good. They're trying to feed John Mechie in there, but Tank Dell is one of the three best open field runners from this draft class. The other two, and I'm not including Devin Achane in that, as good as he is. The other two were Tajay Spears, and then I'm trying to remember the other wide receiver that I had on that list. Zay Flowers. So, that's pretty heady comparison.
Quickly here, just because we're talking about some of these young wide receivers, or we're just now learning as we speak, all the insiders are tweeting the same information at the same time. Mike Williams' MRI confirmed it is a torn ACL and he's done for the year. Get your Quentin Johnston on.
Fuck that. Get your Josh Palmer for right now, or Gerald Everett. Or
last year was more Gerald Everett. Yeah. We'll see if Palmer.
You're going to see more for Quentin Johnston. So if you can't get those other guys, go ahead and go for him. You get a puncher's chance at a big play with him. But if Courtland Sutton has hands issues, he looks like, basically Jamar Chase or Jerry Rice compared to Quentin Johnston's with some of his issues at this point. Quentin Johnston, I joke, is Talladega Nights Ricky Bobby when he's getting interviewed going, I don't know what to do with my hands. I'm always like eager to, when I see an opportunity to get you to speak about something you care about, I'm always eager to do that. You're welcome. Well, do you care about Melvin Gordon at all?
Nah.
Yeah.
I don't. I like 10 carries. It was, all right. I'm just nah. I think more. It's the universe signaling me that I should not be as enthusiastic about Gus Edwards on any given week that I might be.
Yeah, Melvin Gordon was workmanlike. At least he didn't fumble the ball like Kenyon Drake. And Kenyon Drake's just too mercurial. Melvin Gordon's consistent. Gus
Kenyon Drake was their leading fantasy scorer of the running back position for Baltimore last year. Think about that.
Yeah, exactly. And here we go again. Zack Moss.
Yes.
Yes? All right.
Look, man, Zack Moss is what Zack Moss is. Zack Moss is a guy who's going to be on the field like 90+% of the time. He's going to get 90% of the workload of the running backs. And occasionally, he's going to run a nice little wheel route and catch a touchdown pass, apparently.
And apparently, it seems like every time I see a running back win on a wheel route, he's matched up against Patrick Queen, going all the way back to Najee Harris winning a wheel route, Alabama versus LSU against Patrick Queen. So I'm feeling wheel routes against Patrick Queen.
The touchdown notwithstanding, though, Zack Moss has been consistently productive every start he's made going back to last year.
Yeah.
I think it's at least 18 carries. It's at least 80 yards from scrimmage or more. Touchdowns are possible. I think in a world where we live in where, running backs getting that kind of volume are not necessarily the norm, that he's probably easily overlooked in the shuffle.
He runs hard, and if you're getting Zack Moss and you're using him right now,
one more week.
That's all fine and well. Keep going with him.
Right.
And then I would just add Trey Sermon as the potential handcuff there, who wasn't bad in relief in terms of what I saw thus far.
We need to see what's going to happen with Jonathan Taylor too, because again, the talk is that the behind the scenes has calmed to some degree. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, winning can do that, and when you have, Gardner Minshew's pretty darn good. You can see as a reserve, he's getting them in the right plays, which is going to get Taylor excited when he's watching that, because he knows there's going to be better opportunities for him. And of course, Anthony Richardson, you'd want to play with that guy.
I would want to play with that guy.
Yeah, exactly. I like playing with this guy. Even if exactly.
Yeah.
It's Monday. What can I tell you? I get it. That's the thing, though. I mean, even on a Monday, dealing with you is okay.
Mondays.
Yeah, exactly. Love you. Bye.
Love you, man.